My wife slept with my best friend and now wants to work things out. Disposable account. I am from Peru, from a provincial city. When I was 18 years old, my cousin, who is the same age as mine, accused me of having raped her. She and I were very close since we were children, since we used to spend time together. Due to family problems, she began to have depression and X2OB. It wasn't like before. Now all she did was scream, get angry, or even blame me because I didn't have the same problems as her. The truth is I was trying to help her, but my own mental health was beginning to deteriorate, so I decided little by little to move away. Months passed and I had no contact with her until one day my father came to my house and called me. I went out to meet him and he received me with a slap in the face. It should be noted that my father had never hit me before. Who did that was my mother, and only for specific reasons. And hatched by 2OB. When I asked him about the reason behind the hit, he slapped me again and told me to get out of the house, that his brother, my cousin's father, had told him that my cousin said that I raped her and that's why she was so depressed. Apparently her dad realized that she was cutting herself, and to get out of it she just blamed me for everything. My cousin didn't press charges, obviously, because there is no proof, but still my dad told me that my uncle wanted to beat me up. My dad was disappointed in me. He hit me again, called me an abuser, insulted me and told me to get out of his house. My mom was always a submissive person with him, so she didn't say anything to him. I simply, with my lip bleeding, grabbed my most valuable things and left. Thank God I had my savings on my card from what I had worked for, and I was able to go to the capital by public transportation. And hatched by 2OB. Once in the capital, I managed to rent a small room. I had a bad time for the next few years. I had a couple or two for a few years and jumping from job to survive. When I was 20 years old, my partner at that time told me that I could work at the KFC where she worked as a delivery order receptionist. The part-time job paid well, and with the bonuses you could even earn double or triple my salary, so I worked there doing the best I could while studying a technical degree in administration. And hatched by 2OB. Years passed and I ended up becoming a supervisor and then manager of that store thanks to my technical degree in business administration. At the age of 25, I became a partner with a former university classmate with whom I still had contact. She is a lawyer, and at the age of 27 we got married. It was a small wedding because both she and I are modest with expenses and because I had no family to invite. We currently have a 1-year-old son whom I love with all my soul. And hatched by 2OB. It was after this that everything went to hell. Today in the middle of the afternoon there was a knock at my door. It was my parents. It had been more than a decade since I had seen them. I was frozen, but not with fear, but with anger. My dad asked me if he could come in. I told him no, so we talked in a nearby park. In short, they told me that my cousin had committed suicide and that in her letter she confessed the whole truth, that the person who actually abused her was her mother's brother, and that everything was orchestrated by him to be able to cover up and other things. The truth is I was very indifferent. For me, whoever accuses of those crimes deserves to suffer them in flesh, so I didn't feel sorry for her. I told them kindly and resisting my urge to yell at them to go away and never contact me again, that they were dead to me. And hatched by 2OB. When I stood up from the bench to go home, my dad grabbed me by the shoulder. He told me that we have to keep talking. I told him no. He insisted. I told him no. He insisted again, so I turned around and instinctively gave him a hit. I don't know when my dad became so weak. Any Latino knows that country men are quite strong, but one hit was enough to break his nose. He stood stunned looking at me with his eyes open and his nose bleeding, and my mom was covering her mouth. For some reason that I don't explain, my next reaction was to throw myself at him. It wasn't difficult to knock him to the ground, and I continued hitting him. When he started to cover his face, I started hitting his head or forehead. I'll not lie, it felt liberating. I felt like I was crying while I hit him, and I continued until my right hand was hurting. And hatched by 2OB. My mother stood still. For some reason she didn't do anything. She just stood there watching and crying. By that time it was already night, and in our area it was difficult to find people on the street, even less so considering that today there is a soccer game. My mom helped my dad and took a taxi. She didn't say anything to me. She didn't scream. She just cried, and as soon as she grabbed my dad she ran away. I'm not lying. If she had tried to intervene, maybe she would have gotten the same treatment. And hatched by 2OB. A few hours later my mother writes to me on my cell phone. Apparently they contacted a friend from university. I still have my social networks active, who told them where I lived. saying that my father needs a septum reconstruction because it was perforated and dental reconstruction for broken teeth. Everything was going to cost the equivalent of 4,000 est, which is a lot of money here, not a fortune, but it's a lot. And hatched by 20OB. I have already been clear with her. I am not going to put in a single cent. For my sake, she and my dad could end up just like my cousin. I don't care. She has been calling me, asking for forgiveness for everything, that she wants to come back into my life, that she was afraid and that she should have protected me or at least believed me. According to her, my dad felt the same, and according to him, he deserves every hit I gave him. I guess we agree on that. And hatched by 20OB. I told my wife everything. She already knew what happened in the past with my parents. She just told me that she understood. That, according to what I told her, my father died when he kicked me out of his house, so who did I hit was just a stranger with his face. I found her comparison funny and I agreed with her. She told me that if they tried legal measures, we would simply say that it was in self-defense. A law was recently passed in which lethal force can even be used when it's about self-defense, so if something happens to him, we can rely on that. Right now, I'm glad I have a lawyer wife. I can't help but feel more liberated after this. My parents aren't poor, so I know they'll get the money for the operation. I hope they just aren't idiots enough to come back to my house. This is my home now, and if I have to beat them both to get the hell out of my life, I will. At the end of the day, they are the ones who started all this. I was just defending myself. And hatched by 20OB. I still feel a little euphoric and happy. The truth is, I am a little happy that they are suffering. They deserve it. I am happy with my life and my family, and I would protect them at any cost. That includes my parents. I needed to get this off my chest somehow, so I'm writing this to release it. Somehow telling it all has made me feel better. And hatched by 20OB.